Hi, today we are Menlo Park in the GuideSpark office. Keith, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Keith Kitani. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of GuideSpark, a company that's really designed to help organizations communicate and connect with their employees better through video and mobile communications.
Cool. And what did you do before? Because you have something like a really roller coaster life over the last 15 years or so.
Exactly. This is my second startup. So I was originally a long time ago an electrical engineer, but went back to business school and changed my direction. But I started a company in the late 90s. There was a company called Presetti that we sold to Macromedia that was then bought by Adobe, and that was Adobe Connect. So I was really in the learning communication space and decided that while I loved Adobe and that company, that I wanted to start over. And so we started this company in 2008.
And how did you come up with the idea for GuideSpark?
Well, I'd like to tell you that I just came up with it one day and all of a sudden it was a rocket ship, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. So we started this company in 2008 and originally around the idea of helping people with financial education and financial health. But that was right before the recession, and that was not a great time to sell wellness products. So that was a tough time for a couple of years. But what ended up happening is we started talking to customers, and customers really pointed us in a direction about helping them communicate better with their employees around things like benefits and compensation programs. And so the way we came up with the idea overnight is that we kept listening to customers over years of time and finally realized that we had a big, huge market opportunity. And really around 2012, the companies really started to grow very fast.
Yeah, and especially your story is very interesting because you did a big pivot of your business model. Can you elaborate on how the business model was looking before and after?
Yeah, so I touched on that where we were in an area of financial health or financial education and financial wellness. And that's a business actually we are back in, but at the time, that was not a great time for HR. And so we were obviously running out of cash, so we had to really find a business that we could really, have that would sell to customers. And so we talked to a lot of prospects and customers and found that they had this need to communicate very more effectively around benefits and compensation. So they spend a ton of money here in the U.S. on benefits, and it's hard for employees to really understand and value those programs. And so we were able to create video and mobile education around it, and it worked well.
Cool. Let's talk about the business model of GuideSpark. So basically, currently, who are your target customers and what type of value proposition are you delivering to them?
Sure. We have an interesting customer base. I've been around a lot of different startups and companies, but our customer base, we have over 600 customers, and they range in size from 100 employees all the way up to the large Fortune 10 companies. And in fact, we're now in 20% of the Fortune 500. So it doesn't matter what size company you are. The other thing interesting about our business is that we have almost every industry. So we have city governments, we have high-tech companies, we have trucking companies, we have mining companies, we have pretty much every industry. And so, if you think about it, it's every company has employees. Every company has to communicate to those employees, and we're really starting to hit all of those different people.
Mainly in the US because of the different kind of regulations for benefits?
Yeah, so we're US based, but we are supporting some of our multinationals internationally. But the real value proposition is, if you think about how companies communicate today, it's really the same way they've been doing it for the last 10, 20, 50 years. It's employee manuals, it's PowerPoint presentations, it's long text-based emails. And if you think about how you connect and get information in your daily lives, it's probably video, mobile, interactive. And so what we're doing is really helping companies transform their traditional communications into these new forms of communications that really are more effective with engaging employees.
And do you see some kind of increased conversion rates from showing employees the information and then to really sign up to a specific benefit program?
Absolutely. That's one of our key value propositions. But there are a lot more value propositions around that. So increased participation in programs is one of them, but also reduced call center time, reduced travel. There's a lot of different opportunities that have been incredibly valuable for companies to utilize.
Cool. So after you pivoted the business, how was it like acquiring the first customers? How did you tackle them?
The way we pivoted the business, and it's interesting when people say pivot, it feels like it should be a sharp turn. And for me, it took a while because, for many years, we were telling every investor, every employee, every customer how financial wellness is the greatest thing in the world, right? So it takes a little while. But because we were listening to customers, it actually wasn't that hard to actually get them to sell because they would tell us what we wanted. And then like any small company would say, hey, that's great, that's what we do. And so we'd start to sell it and we'd start to really refine that offering and that value proposition.
And did you first focus only on the Bay Area in terms of customers, or did you say, okay, let's sell it nationwide?
Yeah. So what I would say is for the first year or so, we focused on the Bay Area. But very, very quickly, what we realized is it didn't matter where you are. You're a company, you need to communicate, and so we quickly grew all across the country because we were able to really access them through telephone.
Okay. How are you currently managing the customer relationships and trying to really nurture them? So are you doing something like conferences with them, or monthly walk-ins, or steady calls?
We do a variety of things. So we certainly have an annual customer conference. But we also have a customer success team, and our customer success team and account management team check in at least quarterly with our customers to really start doing business reviews, because our goal is to make sure that our solution is adding value to their business, right? We're a subscription-based model, and so if we're not continually adding value, they're going to cancel. And so it's very important for us to constantly be in contact with them to make sure that our system and our solution is adding value to them and their business.
Mm-hmm. So you said that you are based on a subscription model. How did you decide how to price your model?
That's always the hardest question, right, in a new market, right? Generally, if you're in a market that already exists, you can start to price off other people. But what I would say is it was kind of iterative, right? We have an idea of what this might cost, and then you start to test it in the marketplace and try to get an understanding of our value. And so we've been able to arrive at a good place, in terms of different prices for different company sizes and different sizes of library.
So over the last 18 to 24 months, you have been growing extremely fast. Did you perceive any types of growing pains or some obstacles where you said, oh wow, this was very hard for us, and this is how we solved it?
Yeah, solving it seems like we're constantly growing, so I'm not sure we've ever fully solved it. But to give you an idea, in the last 3 years, we've grown from about 10 employees to 300. And so you can imagine that there are growing pains every step of the way there. And it's systems and processes that break. The other thing that's hard is, also people, right? If you think about their skill sets, initial managers, 2 years ago would have teams of 2 or 3 people.
Yeah.
Now these could have 15. And it's a totally different job, totally different skill set. And so, for us, it's really making sure that we're examining at each stage of our business what's right at that stage. And it can be tough, right? Because you have processes that you just implemented, and then you sit back and go, well, maybe that's not the right one. Or you have a system that breaks. I mean, this funny story that I always talk about is we found out that our payroll vendor had a maximum capacity of 150 paychecks. And how did we find that out? We ran 152, right? But when I first started with that payroll company, the last thing I was thinking about is, what's your maximum, right? And you just run into that, and then you write some paper checks, and then you find a new system. And so I think it's been a lot of, kind of learning along the ways. But I think it's the key thing for us is to make sure you realize that that's part of what your business is. That you can't be too locked in, because at that growth rate, you have to constantly realize that the business is going to change. Systems are going to change, processes are going to change, and people have to grow and evolve.
You are mainly based in the Bay Area, but have some other offices. So how do you trying to solve the recruiting issues that you are currently facing? Because in the Bay Area, the unemployment rate seems to be very low.
Yes. Yes.
What kind of measures are you taking to really solve this for extending your growth?
Sure. We've been pretty successful in getting people to join here in the Bay Area, but it is incredibly competitive. And so what we've done is we've selectively added some offices. So we have a Boston office and a New York office, primarily for sales. That's not only for us to attract great people, but also we have a lot of customers on the East Coast, and so it makes a great opportunity for us to grow there. And we just added Portland. So we wanted to add one of the other types of roles we have today are designers and writers and a lot of creative people. And so we're adding an office in Portland and plan to make a big presence there. So, all of those will supplement the Bay Area. We think that the talent here is just a great place for us. But we also need to realize that as we we have these huge growth targets that we got to complement elsewhere.
And are you also planning to add more international clients? Because from my understanding, it's that the benefit system or the offerings are very country or regional specific.
Yeah.
And so once you would like to enter India or China or some other country, that you would guess need to produce new content.
Yeah, so we do support multinationals. So we have companies like Adobe where we support them internationally. And so we have different content for each of their regions. So somebody in Japan sees something different than the US, somebody in the UK sees something different than in let's say, India. So we already have that model. We can translate content into about 15 different languages, but realize that, benefits programs are different, compensation programs are different, but communication is still necessary no matter what language or what country you're in.
Cool. Keith, let's talk about the learnings that you have generated from your first 2 companies. Maybe there were some others coming. But what have been the major learnings?
Sure, I think there's a long list of learnings, and mostly learn the hard way. I touched on one of them already. I think the key is to always be open to change. Like I think when you're in a business and the business is growing, and especially at the early stages, you have to be very flexible. We had to pivot our business. Now on this huge growth stage, we have to really make sure that our systems and processes are right, and constantly relook. So I think one of the key things is to always be flexible. The other one for me is, you got to be passionate about what you do, and you got to really realize it's a long road. In this last company, in GuideSpark here, the first 4 years we had almost no growth. I was telling you earlier, we went from 0 to 4 employees in the first 3 years, right? And it was like 3 to 4 employees, and that's all we had. And then all of a sudden we took off. And I think it's about being passionate about what you want to go accomplish and sticking with it. I mean, entrepreneurship can be hard at times.
And what do you like most about entrepreneurship?
I like building. I really like building. Building products, building teams, building organizations. I think I loved being at some larger companies like Adobe, but I just get excited about building something new, and that's what I'm getting to do here at GuideSpark. So it's been fantastic. I love what I'm doing.
Great, Keith. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
And next time, if you are thinking about what should you do next, and you really enjoy entrepreneurship, just go out there and build a great company. Thank you.